Okay, so last few classes we were looking at kinematics. Okay, so when we studied kinematics, uh, if you look at whatever we have done, we were actually just describing the motion of a particle.
Yeah.
Okay, so in kinematics, uh, so if you look at kinematics, in a particular problem, either the acceleration is given or known.
Okay.
Okay, so this is given or it is known to us. Okay, so in all those free fall and projectile motion problems, we already know that okay, we have to use g as I think in most cases we used 10 meter per second square. So in kinematics, the acceleration is given, and then we just describe the motion of the particle. At times, it might feel it is like you're using mathematics to describe the motion of the particle, right?
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to dynamics, we're going to understand the causes of motion. Okay, so dynamics is we are trying to figure out what is actually causing the motion. So this is the big idea. Okay, so causes of motion is studied. That means the acceleration has to be found using whatever we will be studying here. Okay, so and in fact, whatever we're going to study, you should treat it as a game plan that Newton gave us long ago. Okay, so we're just going to use whatever game plan he has put forward. Okay, so it's like
Okay.
basically we have those three laws of motion, and if we can clearly understand them and then use them, we can answer several questions and then solve several problems. And again, this is what I tell my students. The Newton's laws of motion is very important. It's very crucial. Okay, if you can spend as much time as possible understanding Newton's laws of motion and the concepts of work and energy, every other topic, most of the topics is just an application of these two areas. Okay, so
Okay.
it's very helpful tip. Okay, you should spend as much time as possible understanding the concepts. Okay, answering questions on your own. Okay, because if you take a look at the book I suggested, the Resnick and Halliday by Kenneth Crane, there are several questions, so you can answer them. You can solve problems. Okay. So again, in dynamics, we're going to understand the causes of motion. So that means acceleration will not be given to us. We need to find the acceleration. We are kind of doing some kind of prediction here. Okay, so acceleration needs to be found.
Yeah.
Is you can say evaluated. So now how is this evaluated? So if we want acceleration, Uh, okay, so once we understand the game plan given by Newton, we're going to basically require force, okay, or a collection of forces that are acting on a particle to get the acceleration. And again, Aviram, you have to understand here, I will be sticking to only particle because the dynamics, again, it's a very complicated study, in fact. Okay. So, but initially we're going to do only particle dynamics.
Okay.
Our focus is just particles. And again, the same idea, even if we have objects that seem like bigger, like boxes or like cars, okay, because the way these objects are moving, okay, so all the parts of the objects undergo identical displacements, so we don't really have to worry about the size of the object. Okay, so we can treat them as a particle. So here in dynamics, we're going to take the help of force and get the acceleration. Now, when we try to get the value of force, okay, so there are certain force laws that we'll have to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are like force laws that we will have to understand, and these are mostly experimental. Okay, so people, I mean, great scientists in the past, they have done experiments to come up with these force laws. Okay, most of them are experimental. Okay, so
Yeah.
experimentally verified. Okay, you can say that. And then when it comes to, like, say, once you have the value of force, okay, now depending on the situation that we are studying, let's say the particle is in a particular situation, and then we're going to get this acceleration using Newton's laws of motion. Okay, so that's a game plan I'm talking about, which Newton gave us long ago. Okay. And this is where, see, there's a lot to learn, okay, here. Okay, so we will see. I think right now, probably our focus is to clear a particular exam. But, okay, so the more you spend time with Newton's laws of motion, the more you appreciate, okay, these things.
Okay.
Okay, so you understand fairly what dynamics is. Again, I'm just outlining the, let's say, scope that we're going to cover. Okay, so the idea is, earlier the acceleration was not given. Sorry, earlier the acceleration was given or known. Now the acceleration will not be given to us. We'll have to find that ourselves. Okay. Now, to do that, we're going to rely on kind of two sets of laws. One is like force laws, which are mostly experimental, and the famous Newton's laws of motion. The three laws, I'm sure you're familiar with them. Okay, we're just going to review them today, so that later on, when we do, let's say, problems, they will help us. Okay, so are you okay with this?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, okay, so this is something that you should understand. These words are important. Okay. Now, what is a system and what is a environment? Okay. Now, when we take a system, so we can just say that any object we are interested in, whose motion we are studying. Okay, so any object whose motion is studied. Okay. So, for example, if I so suppose if I throw a ball up in the air, as the ball goes up and then comes down, okay, now the ball is our system. Okay, so we are interested in how this ball is moving up, and then it reaches a point where its velocity is 0 and then starts coming back, right? Okay, so the ball becomes our system here.
Yeah.
Okay, so ball is our system. Okay, I'm writing just S. Now, if I take another example, we will be doing problems on inclined planes down the line.
Yeah.
Okay, so suppose if I have a block, okay, and then I leave this block on an inclined plane. I'm interested in how it is going to move on this inclined plane. So then this block becomes our system.
Yes.
Okay. And then later on, when you study gravitation, suppose, okay, so the sun is, considered to be at one spot, and then the earth is going around the sun in the elliptical orbit, or I think we'll mostly study circular orbits. So if you are interested in studying how earth moves around the sun, the earth becomes our system.
Okay.
Do you get the point? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what is environment? Environment is all the objects. Okay, so like it's a collection of objects. uh, some of these objects can be very near to our system or can be very far from the system. Okay, so the only thing is, do they have a meaningful influence on our system? Okay, so collection of all objects that have meaningful influence, or in a way we can say meaningful interaction. Okay, so let me put that down. So if you take environment, so it's the collection of objects. It could be just one object. Okay, so collection of objects with meaningful interaction. Now, when I say meaningful, it has influence. Okay, so meaningful interaction.
Yeah.
And by the way, this interaction is
Yeah.
like characterized by force. Okay, so whatever we call, let's say if we say that two objects are interacting, okay, so that interaction is characterized by a force, which we know it is a pull or a push. Okay, now if you go back to our examples
Yeah.
that I put here, if I take ball as our system, okay, now the moment I throw a ball up in the air, I know it is going to come back because the earth is exerting its influence on the ball. Okay, so now earth becomes an object in its environment. Okay, so in this case you can say for this particular system, okay, I can say what is the environment. I can say, I am just writing env for environment. I can say earth is the environment. Now,
Yeah.
can is moon not applying any force on the ball? Maybe it is applying. Okay, so but it's not, let's say, it is not going to definitely not outweigh the influence provided by earth. Earth is applying much greater force on this ball, right?
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about moon.
Yeah.
Okay, and other
Okay.
things like when we study basic physics, uh, even though, okay, so I can practically say air is also part of the environment if I'm interested in air resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I have to evaluate air resistance, then air becomes important. Okay, so that is part of the environment. But I think in our basic physics problems, we need air to breathe, but we somehow do problems in vacuum. Okay, so the air
Yeah.
resistance is neglected. Okay, so in that case, yeah,
Okay.
it is okay to skip, let's say, air as part of our environment. It's definitely part of
Yeah.
our environment. Okay, so you understand,
Okay.
the air
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
definitely part of our environment, but yeah, in this case we can ignore. Now, when it
Okay.
comes
Yeah.
to the wedge here, okay, so if I list down the environment, see, earth is like, it will be part of the environment in like all the problems in Newton's laws of motion. Okay,
Yeah.
so earth, yes, definitely. And then here if you see wedge, okay, so
Yeah.
the wedge on which the block is moving is going to
Okay.
interact with the block. Okay, so they're
Yeah.
going to have an interaction. Now suppose there's a person standing here. Okay, so he is analyzing the motion of the block. Now can I consider this person as part of the environment?
No, because it's not affecting the block, right? It's not.
Great. Okay, so it is this guy is not going to like affect. Okay, so I
Yeah.
mean, theoretically speaking, yeah, he is applying a tiny force on the block, but it's negligible. Okay, so we can ignore that.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't have to worry. Let's say about him. Okay, we can't. It's okay to skip him from the environment. Okay, and again,
Okay.
you get the idea, right? Environment is like not. If I'm analyzing the motion of an object, environment is not all the objects which are near the system. Okay, so environment is objects which are interacting with the system. Okay, so
Okay.
this understanding is important. Okay, and then similarly
Yeah.
here the sun becomes the environment. Okay, so obviously there are other planets that are like applying forces on the earth. Okay, so even moon is applying exerting influence on the earth. But when we study, let's
Yes.
say, orbital motion of the earth around the sun, because sun has the greatest influence, we're going to just treat sun as part of the environment.
Okay.
So do you understand this concept of system and environment? Because that is
Yes,
very
I
very
understand.
important for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're okay? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing that we need to understand is in most of the Newton's laws of motion problems, okay, this field concept is important. Okay, so gravitational field. Now, when we study gravitation, I will also discuss gravitational field there as well. But what you need to understand here is the way earth applies force on any object. Okay, so near it. Okay, so whether
Yeah.
this object is on the surface of the earth or like somewhere up in the air, or maybe let's say you have this object in a tunnel dug, maybe I don't know, so some meters deep below the surface of the earth is definitely exerting its influence. Okay, so the way we understand this influence is it's like this. Let's say if I consider, let's say this is earth. Okay,
Yeah.
now uh, let's say the space around the earth is affected by the presence of the earth.
Okay.
Okay, so the idea is at each point in space, okay, at each point in space, earth is exerting its influence. Now how do we understand that influence? We say that, okay, at a particular point here, suppose if I take a point P here. Now suppose somebody leaves a ball at that particular point P, so the ball immediately starts falling down.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, the moment you place the ball, it will immediately start falling down. Now, if I take another location, so somewhere here, suppose, so there is a point Q. Even if I leave a ball here, it is going to fall towards the earth,
Yeah.
right? So let me. So it's going to fall towards the earth. So that means at each point in the space surrounding the earth is exerting its influence. So this space, you can let's say you can say that this region as the gravitational field. That is one way of saying it. The another way of thinking about gravitational field is, so this is important to understand. Again,
Yeah.
just we're going to briefly touch upon this right now. Later on, we will get into details. Okay. So right now, understand gravitational field as the force applied by Earth, okay, on a unit mass. Okay, so force applied by Earth on a unit mass. Now, this unit mass is like 1 kg mass. So this kind of acts like a test mass. Okay, so suppose if this is like 1 kg, I know Earth is going to apply some force on it, right? Now, ideally, what are we trying to do whenever, let's say, near the surface of the Earth, whether it is on the surface of the Earth or somewhere up in the air? So, let's say this object has mass m, and then there's another object up in the air. This object also has mass m. We're going to apply, we're going to say that, okay, Earth is applying a force of mg, right?
Yes, yes.
And on this also, we're going to say applying force of mg. So that g is the gravitational field, okay, or you can say magnitude of the gravitational field. Now, coincidentally, for gravitation, that is also the acceleration due to gravity.
Okay.
You understand? I mean, gravitational field and acceleration due to gravity, in the context of gravitation, they numerically have the same values with same units and so on. Okay.
Yes.
Because the way the force exists between two objects having mass, somehow it happens. Okay. But when you go forward and then study about another type of field called electrostatic field, there you don't have this. Okay. So G is also, again, I'm just repeating this idea. G is also acceleration due to gravity. G is also the magnitude of gravitational field. Okay, so the force applied by the Earth on a unit mass. I think at this stage, if you understand this, this is good enough. The idea is I have two objects, right? I mean, let's say if I have a ball up in the air and I have Earth, again, I'm just drawing, again, nothing is drawn to scale. I hope you understand, right? And then the way interaction happens is like Earth is sort of interacting via a field, you can say. Okay, so the interaction is happening via a field. Okay, so these are like field vectors. Later on, when you study calculus, vector calculus, and you can explore more on this. So at every point, okay, so at every point surrounding the Earth, you can imagine a vector. Okay, the gravitational field vector, which is nothing but the force that Earth will apply provided you bring a unit mass to that location. You get the idea? So the interaction is like basically non-contact interaction, right?
Yes, yes.
So Earth is like spreading its influence in space, and then you bring some object there, and then it immediately feels that force. Okay, so it immediately feels the pull by the Earth. You're okay here?
Yes, yes.
And then again, till we study gravitation, the way we calculate the force is mg. Okay, so m is the mass, and then g is the gravitational field wherever the mass is, okay, or blocks, whatever. So we're just going to take it as mg, and then that is the force law I was talking about. Okay, so when I said we need force laws, okay, so that's how we're going to calculate the value of the forces. But okay, so but again, I'll just state anyway here. But this is important, Newton's law of gravitation. Okay, so when we study gravitation in detail, we're going to start with this Newton's law of gravitation. This is a force law. Okay, so this is different from laws of motion. Okay, so Newton's law of universal gravitation.
Okay.
What it says is if you have two particles in space, okay, so let's say there's a particle of mass m1, and there's another particle of mass m2. The distance between them is r. I'm sure you know about this. Okay, so the force applied by the first particle on the second particle. So let's say I'll call it as F21. Okay, so F21 is the force on second particle by first particle. Okay, now this is given by this expression G m1 m2 by
R
r.
represents the distance, right?
R is the distance between them. Yes.
Okay.
So this is something I'm sure you're familiar with this, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to use this till we study gravitation. Okay, so I mean, if let's say if this is the Earth, suppose Earth has mass m, and then there is another particle of mass small m. If r is the distance between them, technically speaking, this force is like G capital M by r square, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to use mg. You understand this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so later on when we study gravitation, the important thing to be noted about this expression formula, which is anyway obtained experimentally, is this is valid only for point masses. Okay, so these m1 and m2 are point masses.
Yeah.
Okay, so similarly, we have this Coulomb's law. I'm sure even you're familiar with that, right? Coulomb's law. You're familiar with Coulomb's law? Are you?
I've heard it before. I'm not
Ever heard about Coulomb's law?
Yes, I've heard it. But
yeah, again, so there are, if you have 2 point charges instead of point masses, okay, so if you have point charges, again, I'm going to briefly touch upon these here, but later on I will we will study them in detail. So if you have 2 point charges, the force between them, okay, so if I take this, the force applied on charge 2 by 1, this is given, you have a similar expression. Okay, so instead of capital G, you can take something known as K, okay, called Coulomb's constant, and then we have Q1 Q2 by R square. Okay, so even here we have this field concept. Okay, so if you have a charge somewhere, be it a particle or an object, okay, so if you have charge somewhere, it is going to exert its influence in the space surrounding it. Okay, so that means if I pick any point, let's say called X in the space, this charge, okay, so this charged object.
Yeah.
Okay, so this charged object is going to apply a force. Okay, so here when we talk about electrostatic field, or we just call it as electric field. So this electric field is also a force per some unit idea. Okay, so in the gravitational context, we were saying it is force per unit mass. So here it is force on a unit positive charge. Okay, unit positive charge, which is 1 Coulomb. So if you bring a unit positive charge, whatever charge this charged object applies, that is considered as the field. Again, visually, if you want to think about them visually, at each point in the space, you can imagine that there is an arrow pointing towards the source object. Okay, so let's say in the space surrounding, everywhere you can imagine that there are arrows, let's say, pointed towards the source charge. Okay, so those arrows represent the force vectors on a unit positive charge. Okay, so you get this, Abhiram? We're just calculating the force that this charged object could apply on a unit positive charge. That's like plus 1 coulomb. It's the same idea for gravitational field. In the gravitational field also, if you look at Earth, at each point surrounding the Earth, you don't really have to bring a 1 kg object there. Okay, we can just calculate the value of force that the Earth could apply, provided you bring an object there. So, are you okay so far? Yeah.
Yes.
Then the other, let's say, type of forces that we need to understand is the contact forces. Okay. Okay. So before I move on here, one more small thing with electrostatic force. Right now, you don't have to worry about electric fields. Okay. So I think mostly we will let's say deal with the gravitational field only. But in case if we have time, we can also start studying electrostatic fields. Okay, so now let us look at contact forces. Okay. Now, if you look at the gravitational field or the force applied by the Earth on any object, it is going to apply force even when the objects are not in contact with the Earth. Okay, so there we needed a field concept to understand the forces. Here, the contact forces fundamentally they are very complicated. Okay, so the contact forces fundamentally they are very complicated, but we are not going to study at that microscopic level. Okay, so now let me take an example to help you understand this. So let's say this is a horizontal surface. Okay. Now, if I place a block on the horizontal surface, I have placed a block. Now, this horizontal surface could be the table, the block. Instead of block, you can also imagine a book placed on the table. The Earth is definitely applying force on the block. Okay, so if M is the mass of the block, the force applied by the Earth is mg.
Okay.
Now we know, I mean, if you place a block on a rigid horizontal surface, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, vertically it is not going to anywhere. So that means the horizontal surface is applying a force in the opposite direction of the force applied by the Earth. Okay, so that's one example of the contact force. Okay, so there is a reaction force. I think we normally give a name called normal reaction, right? Or we just say normal force.
Yeah.
Okay, that is one. And another example of contact force is, suppose if I take this inclined plane. Okay, so let's say the angle of inclination is theta. If there is a block, okay, so just imagine that this inclined plane is rough. Okay, it is a rough inclined plane. Okay, so here the force applied by the Earth is always like perpendicular to the horizontal ground. Okay, so this is the horizontal ground. Okay, so that's the horizontal ground. So force is anyway perpendicular to that. And if I split this, or let's say take components of mg, I have a force. Let me use a different color. Okay, so this is mg cos theta. Abhiram, you should ask me questions if you don't follow these things. And then there's a
Okay.
force along the incline, which is mg sine theta.
Yeah.
Now, here, when you look at the surface, the inclined plane, it can apply two kinds of forces here. Okay, so I should not say can, it applies. Okay, so
Yeah.
sometimes my language is not that great. Okay, so you should pause me and ask me. So there is definitely a normal force here perpendicular to the surface, and
Yes.
because the surface is rough, okay, so there's a friction force acting in the upward direction. So here, if you talk about the example of contact forces, we are talking about two forces. So one is the normal force,
Yeah.
and the other is friction forces. These are good examples of contact forces. Are you okay so far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when we, let's say, solve numericals in, let's say, Newton's laws of motion, again, it's like, even when we are not doing, okay, so if you want to predict, we want to find the acceleration of the block here, we need to calculate the value of these forces. Okay, so normal force is very easy to calculate. If I look at the example on my left, because this block is not going anywhere, we can use Newton's laws, and then, or we can say that, let's say Newton's second law, even, I mean, I've not told you yet, but we're going to use Newton's laws to get the value of normal force. We're going to get the value of normal force in the second case. But when it comes to friction, okay, uh, the value of the frictional force is actually found experimentally. Okay, so I'll come to that little later.
So we can derive it through an experiment, or we can.
No. I mean, see, these contact forces arise because of the intermolecular interactions. Okay, so if I place a block on a table,
Yeah.
wherever there is contact, okay, so there is interaction between the atoms. It's much more complicated. These are much more complicated. See, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm showing you one arrow and then saying that that is the force applied by the horizontal table on the block. This arrow is like, you should think of it as like a representation of kind of sum of all the forces that the table could apply in the upward direction. Because, see, uh, if you look under the microscope, you would see that any plane surface is actually not really plane. Okay, so like you'll find hills and valleys. And if I place a block on a horizontal plane surface, for sure, okay, they don't establish contact everywhere. Okay, so wherever there is a contact, you can say that there is a force in the upward direction. Okay, so wherever there is a contact,
Okay.
there is a force in the upward direction.
Okay.
So let's me put it here. So maybe somewhere here there is a contact, somewhere here there is a contact. Maybe I have a force F1 here. Maybe I have a force F2 here. Okay, maybe a smaller force. There's another force F3 here. At several other locations, there may not be forces at all. So what this normal force is just telling us is, it is just the sum of all those forces in the upward direction. But are we going to calculate those, let's say, tiny interactions? No, we're not going to go there. Okay.
No.
Because this is like a much complicated study. If you actually look at the origins of normal force and the frictional forces, their origins are they're of electromagnetic nature. Okay. So you will have to understand at a microscopic level. Okay. So the origins are electromagnetic. I mean, it is interesting to note that several forces are actually, most of the forces are actually electromagnetic. I mean, we sit on a chair, okay, we have
Yeah.
our laptop on a study desk, okay, the desk is supporting the laptop, okay, so that normal force, its origins are electromagnetic, okay, so the interaction actually starts from at an atomic level, okay, and we are not there yet to study things at such a minute level. Okay, so we're just going to give a high level force name, okay, whose value we can either get it from Newton's laws of motion, or in certain cases like we can evaluate that experimentally, okay, and then we use it in our
Yeah.
let's say solving problems. You get this?
Yeah.
Okay. Now here, I think, see, uh, I think I'll do one thing. Okay, I'll revisit these two situations once we briefly talk about Newton's laws of motion. Okay, I think I'm sure you're familiar with Newton's first law, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if let's say forces are absent or net force is zero, or we can say vector sum of forces is zero. So what do you say here? An object at rest or uniform motion will continue to be at rest and then uniform motion. Okay. Okay. So an object uh, at rest or in uniform motion. Uniform motion is moving at a constant speed along a straight line in a given direction. Basically, constant velocity. Like an object at rest or in uniform motion will continue to do so. Will continue to be at rest or in uniform motion. Okay, so this is something when we studied, I guess, the non-inertial frame and inertial frame, we talked about this. Abhiram, do you recall? So I'm not
Yes.
going to stress much on this here. Okay, so because we already know this. Okay, but I think this
Yeah.
is important to keep in mind. Okay, so I mean, either the forces are absent or the vector sum of the forces, if it is zero, if an object is at rest, it will continue to be at rest. Okay, so that means there will not be any change in velocity. Okay, uh, and if it is in uniform motion, again, if it is moving at constant velocity, it will continue to move at constant velocity if forces are absent, or the forces are present, but the sum of forces is zero. Okay, and a very basic example is like, again, you place a block on a table or a book on a table. Earth is applying mg, the table is applying normal force, they balance one another. Okay, so the vector sum is zero, so the block is at rest and it continues to be at rest. Okay, now what is really amazing about this law is the later part. Okay, I mean, if an object is in uniform motion, continuing to be in uniform motion is actually quite amazing, because uh, on Earth, near the surface of the Earth, we cannot do away with the forces. Okay, so we
Yeah.
can ensure that the vector sum of the forces is zero. Okay, but that is also pretty hard. Okay, so you will have to design an experiment to do that. Okay, I think people experiment with air tracks. Okay, so where they try to have a cushion of air and then they create almost like kind of very, very low friction environment. And then you have these riders or blocks on that air tracks. If you push them, they tend to move for larger distances. Okay, so but this is an example that I give my students. I think this is a very, I mean, we can argue about that example, but let's say suppose an alien abducts you, okay?
Yeah.
And then the alien takes you to some deep space and then pushes you, okay? And then the alien disappears from there. In that deep space, there are no objects around you, okay? So practically no interaction. Okay, no interaction means there's no object which is applying force on you. Okay, so perfect for testing Newton's first law. Okay, so
Yeah.
whatever velocity that you get because of the push given by the alien, you will have that. You will continue to move with that velocity. You don't have to do anything special. You get that, Abhiram.
Yes.
Okay, so that's quite amazing how well how Newton actually was able to come up with this. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what we need to keep in mind. So basically, if net force is zero, when symbolically, if net external force is zero, all this is saying is change in velocity is not possible. Okay, so change in velocity is zero, or in other words, you can say acceleration is zero. Okay, so that's what this law is saying. You're okay?
Yeah.
Then, if you look at the Newton's second law, it's more of an experimental law, and then, okay, but it is very useful for us. Okay, so this is what is used to solve most of the problems. Okay, so once you are able to calculate the vector sum acting on an object, okay, if the sum is not zero, then this law tells that the net force acting on an object, okay, so the net external force, I'm not putting that sigma, like just assume that if even if I don't put sigma, it identifies. Okay, so without sigma also, if I just put external force, sometimes I use something like this. Okay, net.
Yeah.
I think I like this net. Okay, so this is equal to mass into acceleration.
Okay.
So this is Newton's second law. But again, this is commonly used. But I think when Newton gave us his law, it was actually given in the form of momentum, linear momentum. I think you know linear momentum, right?
Yes. Yes.
So linear moment, if an object is moving with velocity v, if the object has mass m, the linear momentum is mv. Okay,
Yeah.
so the force is defined as rate of change of linear momentum. Okay, the symbol used for linear momentum is p. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're going to use this. Okay, then
D stands for distance, or?
which one?
Oh, sorry. Never mind. It's
No,
derivative. Right?
no.
It's derivative.
Okay, so this is where remember you'll have to revisit my notes on the basic calculus that I taught you. Okay,
Yeah.
so I have a linear momentum function. Okay, so right now you treat this as a operator, mathematical operator. Okay, so d by dt is a mathematical operator which is telling us the rate at which that linear momentum is changing. Okay, the rate at which the linear momentum is changing, that rate is the force applied on that object. Okay, so right now you just treat d by dt as a mathematical operator to get derivatives. Okay, the rates, you can say mathematical operator to get rates. Okay, so I hope you're okay with the Newton's second law, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this d by dt,
Yes,
right, to
yes.
treat it as a mathematical operator, which gives us the derivative in the sense the rate at which the linear momentum changes. That's the force. Okay. Now, another way to think about this is the forces are kind of causes. Okay, so causes, and this is acceleration is the result. Okay, so effect. Now, whenever you use Newton's second law, uh, only worry about the directional aspect of the forces. Okay. So once you apply this law, the acceleration is automatically obtained with the direction, magnitude and direction of the acceleration is automatically obtained. So never adjust the sign for acceleration. So I will highlight this point when we do problems. Okay. And I think when we spoke about contact forces, okay, so if you come back here, we will try and understand how to get the value of the friction force. But there's another contact force that I will mention after I discuss Newton's third law. Okay, so what is your understanding of Newton's third law?
So Newton's third law basically is stating that every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Very good, you can say that. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So now what are these actions and reactions? Actions and reactions are just names given to the forces.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that is what I want you to understand. So action and reaction are forces or names of forces. Okay, so they're just forces. If you go back to our discussion on systems and environment, okay, so here, if I take, let's say the ball is our system and then earth is in the environment, the earth is applying force on the ball. Okay, so let's say I'll put force. Abhiram, pay attention here. Force applied by the earth on the ball. So I'm going to write B for ball and E for earth. Okay. And what Newton's third law says is, okay, so if earth is applying force on the ball will also apply force on the earth. Okay. I mean, I should ideally show it along the same line, but let's say, so this is the force applied by the ball on the earth. Okay, so these two forces are equal and opposite. Okay, so the force applied by earth on the ball is equal to the force applied by the ball on the earth. So you'll have to use a minus sign here if I write them down vectorially. Are you okay here?
Yeah.
Now, if you call one of these forces action, okay, so for example, if I call this force as action, the other one will become reaction. Okay,
Yeah.
so if I call this force, the force that the ball applies on the earth as the action, the other force is reaction. You get my point?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, another way to think about Newton's third law is in nature, forces always occur in pairs. Okay.
Again.
Forces always occurs in pairs.
Okay.
That's what Newton's third law is saying. Okay. So there is no isolated force. Okay. So no single isolated force is possible.
Okay.
Single isolated force does not exist.
Yeah.
So this is what we need to understand. Again, now Newton's first law and third law, the kind of, let's say, they become the conceptual backbone of our problem solving. Okay, so you have to keep them in mind every time you answer a question or solve a problem. Okay, Newton's second law is like you apply the equation and then do some mathematics and then try to get the answer and then things like that. But if our understanding of Newton's first law and third law is shaky, then the use of Newton's second law, I mean, you can use it, but it's not going to give you the expected results.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now here.
So there are no examples in which a single isolated force exists, right?
No.
Zero? Never?
No. I mean, you apply, let's say if you see an object applying force on some other object, the other object will reciprocate. It will apply force back on this object.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
okay.
I mean, if I say that, okay, without taking a specific example, if there's an object A and there's another object B, so if A is applying force on B, okay, so the on B by A, then immediately A is also applying, B is also applying force on A by B. And these are equal and opposite. They have same magnitude and oppositely directed. You're okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, another finer point to keep in mind is, if you see this, the so-called action and reaction, they are not getting applied on the same object. You understand? Sometimes students
they're getting applied on different objects.
By mistake, they do that. I mean, if you see these forces, are these two forces acting on the same object? No.
No.
Right. So if you go back to that here, the force applied. Okay, so this is the force applied on the ball by the earth. Okay, and this is EB. The force EB is the force applied on the earth by the ball. Okay, so this action and reaction, they act on two different objects, not on the same object.